it's kind of entertaining when you get an attorney who gives you a minute and a half long question that you just say, no.
Okay,
Yes.
recording. Chairman, I am ready.
Like to open the very special meeting, since it's July friggin' 2nd, of the Point Pleasant Beach Board of Adjustment. Get a reading of the Open Public Meetings Act, please.
Adequate notice at the time of this meeting was given under the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Act and was posted and sent to the official designated newspaper in compliance with the law.
Roll call, please.
Secretary Davis.
Here.
Ms. McFadden.
Here.
Vice Chair Reynolds.
Here.
Chairman Strunches.
Here.
Mr. Neal.
Here.
Mr. Clayton.
Here.
And Mr. Loder.
Here.
I have just the one set of minutes. Your initials are there if you can vote. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Secretary Davis.
Yes.
Vice Chair Reynolds.
Yes.
Mr. Neal.
Yes.
Mr. Clayton.
Yes.
Mr. Loder.
Yes.
And Chairman Strunches.
Yes.
And then on to the continuing application of 804, 808 Arnold Avenue. Mr. Rubino.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Michael Rubino Jr., appearing for the applicant. There's been a number of changes. A client heard a lot of comments both from the board and from the members of the public, and he's decided to change the use of the grass portion that's next to the residential houses from a driveway into grass. So Mr. Kashuba, because the meetings were so close, we didn't have the chance to formally refile the whole thing. But Joe, I think Joe, rather than me explain it to you, and have Joe explain it to you.
Thanks.
He'll explain exactly what is next.
Yes. That'll work. Is this,
This
gotta
is
get marked?
a copy of an exhibit that I have on the board. I provided,
I just wanna check on how this is being marked for where we're
Well,
at.
we can mark it even though you did have it. It was submitted to me earlier today.
Yeah, our last A3 was the photo board, west level,
The photo boards against,
west level,
Yep.
here, let me just see, if
Of
we're up
West
to
Laurel.
A4.
how high did we go?
so it sounds like we marked it A4.
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 So,
Revised
Mr.
site plan.
Mr. Kashuba, I know you're sworn from the last meeting, but just
Yes.
quick, state the facts of that you're here and it's you that's
Absolutely.
talking.
Still an architect? I
I'm
mean,
still an
still an
engineer, still a
engineer.
planner. My licenses are still in good standing. I did provide testimony at the previous hearing, and I was under oath then and continue to.
Very good.
Thank you.
Since the last hearing, we had meetings with the client, discussions, and we made some substantial changes to the plan. Would you explain those to the board, please?
Absolutely. So I provided you a small copy of the exhibit, the two substantial changes that have been made to the application. We're proposing to eliminate the driveway on West Laurel. We're gonna replace that with lawn area to reduce the impervious coverage as well as the impact to the neighbors. Obviously, that was a big item that was discussed at the last hearing. And then, in order to account for that, to have a little bit of extra parking in front of the residence, we're proposing a little bit of additional impervious coverage there to allow for 4 cars to park comfortably in front of the house. That increase in impervious is rather small. At the end of the day, we've now reduced the impervious coverage to about 66%, where 70 is permitted. So we've eliminated that variance, further promoting the general welfare. We've eliminated the impact on the neighborhood. We're providing the parking the most appropriate location. So all of my testimony, my planning testimony from the previous hearing stands, and I believe after these changes, it's an even more appropriate application that the board can approve. That's it.
Why don't you
Unless
sit
the board has
and ask
questions.
Anybody have any questions about that revision? Ray, I know there wasn't a new letter formed in all this time or whatever, but all pretty straightforward in terms of the driveway people were questioning goes away in its entirety and it's grass.
Yep.
And then they're just opening up a little more space to get another space or two in, I guess. I don't know how much additional.
Yeah, that's right behind the funeral parlor, right?
That'll,
Correct, but
that'll
behind the
help.
building, out of view from the street.
And that'll help.
You'll still be under the 70%, correct?
Absolutely, it'll be about 66%.
And that'll help folks get in the house rather than having to go through the residential area across that zone.
No one on the board has any additional questions regarding that? Anyone in the audience have any questions of the engineer planner as it relates to that? Sure, come on up.
Hi, Mayor Del Turner, I'm on 817 West Laurel. I just was gonna have to, so you're gonna pull up the concrete and put grass in, and who's maintaining that?
Correct.
They're gonna maintain it so it doesn't
The
end up to
homeowner.
be a,
The homeowner, the property owner will maintain it, yes.
of the residential house on?
No, it'll be,
It'll be the responsibility of the property owner. Whether they make it the tenant's responsibility is between them and the tenant. but it'll
Okay,
be-
so the renter that's in there would be responsible.
not
May I
necessarily.
interject? I would ask, I would ask.
Bob,
Hold on.
nope, you're not sworn in.
Well, he was sworn
Oh.
last meeting, he just can't shout out and,
The landlord has a company that will be maintaining the site as well as the renter.
Okay, does the concrete stay or it goes, or?
The concrete's being removed.
Okay, so there'll be no access whatsoever?
No vehicular access there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
anyone else? Go ahead, come on up, ma'am. State your name.
Yeah, my name is Mary Turbeck. I own the house at 504 Kramer, and I just have a question. The house already has 2 parking spots, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so will this be an additional 4, or is it a total of 4?
No, expanding for a total of 4.
Okay, so it's 2 more.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? All right.
Anything else?
And then just to
Looks like you're good.
clarify, Mr.
Yep.
Chairman, so West Laurel is a kind of a rolled curb. So I don't necessarily see any reason to take the curb out. However, the curb is easily mountable, so, and I think, Mr. Kashuba's testimony, and I think the applicant's indication is that the driveway is being removed and no vehicles will park on that portion of the property. So just because it's Seafood Festival Day doesn't mean that we get to park on the front lawn.
We stipulate to that, correct.
Got it.
If I'm not
That'll be
mistaken,
a
that's a law.
condition.
And that is it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're good? No other questions? Do you have any other witnesses?
Nope.
So, Ben,
Unless the board has any other questions of our,
I'll get there. I just wanna, because the public's gonna still be able to comment. Before we do that, can we just kinda go over where we're at and what we're approving or being asked to approve right now and make sure we're in line since we had the,
Sure, so.
little break in the meeting?
Sure, so if you go back to Ray's original report, it lays out the relief being requested for the change of the use of the existing commercial building from the retail use to a proposed gym use on the first floor and basement, as well as retail or other permitted uses in the basement and on the first and second floors. So that's an open question about the second tenant use. It needs a D2 variance for an expansion of the non-conforming use because there is a pre-existing non-conforming use, that being the single-family home existing on the site. And by the expansion, that requires the D2 variance. Obviously, it lays out the bulk variances that are required separate and apart. And the parking deficiency we talked about as well.
There was testimony provided that there'd be no exterior training, and then the proposed tenant who testified at the last meeting, and then the indication from Mr. Rubino was, with regard to if that tenant moved out, could Muscle Maker Jim move in or whoever. There was an indication that that the applicant would be amenable to restricting the extent of the gym operation.
Or any new gym operation would have to come back, we could
Right.
put that in the
the intent
stipulation,
would
right?
be if somebody new takes over that wants to operate from 4 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night for whoever exercises it, those odd hours.
I think we're gonna ask that if the gym changes hands, that new gym will have to come back here and lay out their framework.
If it operates the same way,
If it operates the same.
no. If it operates different hours, different times and so forth,
So,
then it would have to.
Ben, when you mentioned the parking deficiency, Mr. Kashuba, last time one of the members of the public, like, talked about the square footage of the building and the ability for a restaurant or something to go in that would require 100 spaces or something, and you had some sort of formula that you had come up with that put a restriction to, rather than having any future use have to come back to us, you had had a way that you limited that. What was that you did again? I just
So
want to
the
remember.
calculation we had done and adjusted based upon the architect's testimony as well as far as the area of the building was that at maximum 165 parking stalls are required per the ordinance, and that's using 1 per 100 square foot for all of the publicly accessible commercial space. And I don't wanna take credit for it, it was actually the project architect who had offered that. But the testimony was, if the parking demand increases above the parking demand that we're requesting this evening, the 163 spaces, by virtue of a restaurant with a substantial amount of seats, if we exceed that number, we have to come back and reobtain a new parking
So
variance.
to understand that certain uses have a more liberal parking need, and that's drives a higher amount, and so what we're saying. So Ben, is that an enforceable type restriction that would make a certain use that would go over have to come back before us?
Yeah, I think that's a easily enforceable restriction, and it's a concrete calculation as well. I note that on A4, Mr. Kashuba has laid that out as well, in the box below the zoning table, where he has tenant space and parking calculations, and then there's a box below it that indicates permitted use and parking requirements. So, yeah,
So
we
that
can
permitted use is
put
based
that-
on a certain
Based on
use,
any of the retail uses at 1
retail
per
use,
100.
not restaurant use, right? So
Correct.
that's why it's more restrictive or
Any
less
other
restrictive.
permitted use will be required to submit a parking calc and demonstrate that they don't need a greater parking variance. If they do, they're back here before you.
If they go past that, they'd have to come back. Does anybody on the board have any additional questions or comments to that
No.
stipulation, or if that's, again, we're just trying to, part of me going to bed before the public, I'm trying to define what we're voting on. And that defines a reason why certain uses may have to come back here if they went over that. But
I think-
others that are allowed could go in.
Well, I think that certainly sounds reasonable, without being overly restrictive. I think we also heard testimony to the fact that quite likely, somebody who, a business with a very intensive use, such as a restaurant, may very well pass on a property like this simply because the lack of parking.
Mhm.
So, but say a coffee grinder wanted to rent space on the second floor, as an example, where they have 3 employees and they take in a load once a week and roast coffee, then, that's a pretty minimal impact.
Got it. Anyone else have any other questions or anything? All right, so I think you're good, Mr. Kashuba.
Thank you very much.
Audience doesn't have anything. We're good for public comment now, right, Ben? I think we're at that stage.
Yes.
So for this part of it, audience members, you do get sworn in, and now it's not just questions or anything. You can tell us all that you feel about the case or whatever you want. So you just come in, state your name, you'll get sworn in, and then tell us. So does anybody want to make any comments on the case? Sir, come on up.
Hi, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear affirmative testimony I'll give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Your name and address?
Peter Fishbein, 1127 Estelle Street, Point Pleasant.
I'm sorry, I missed the location.
1127 Estelle Street in Point
That's
Pleasant.
my residence, but I own a house on 504 Kramer Ave. Which is
Very good.
right across from the parking lot.
All right.
Okay, my concern is over parking. Parking is very tight in that area. That's why the borough, a year or two ago, added spots to municipal lot 11, which is the lot right across from my house. And they also added 5 spots along Kramer Ave. And that was a smart thing to do because parking is very tight. Rudy's, I think, had a very low impact on parking. They use that municipal lot, but I would be surprised if there were ever more than 2 or 3 customers' cars from Rudy's in that lot. I think that the zoning law regarding parking is something to be taken seriously. I mean, it's there for a reason. It, it's based on the master plan. It's not something that just is arbitrary. And I think you guys should consider it. I know that they want to reduce their need from 180 spots to needing only 150, if I understand that right. But right now, they only have 2, so that's kind of a big ask. I kind of think there's other recourse that the owner might have. It's a big rambling building, 18,000 square feet. It was built as a series of additions. Additions can be removed and parking could take their place. And also, it would reduce the need, the less square footage would be the less need for parking too. The house is non-conforming, that could be removed. Maybe there's a possibility, there is a lot across the street that's a private lot that's between the Meridian and the Dollar General, and maybe parking could be leased from them. I'm just speculating that there is recourse for the owner. Let's see. No, I think my only comment is that that parking is a big consideration, and it isn't fair, to residents and other businesses in the area that this use. I mean, just tenant number 1 would at times require 25 parking spots. That's 70% of the entire municipal lot. I think that the owner should be obliged to provide some parking for himself without relying on the municipal lot, and adding 2 isn't very much. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So.
Good evening, board members. My name is Terry Brady. I live at 208 Trenton Court, which is at the intersection of Trenton Court and West Laurel on the southwest corner. I mentioned to the board at the last meeting, not only am I a resident within 200 feet, I happen to be an attorney who has rather extensive land use law experience. Hopefully the board will consider some of my experience in determining the weight to be given to the testimony that I give. My experience is not just being a lawyer for 45 years, but I represent 7 different land use boards in Ocean County, plus a couple of governing bodies: Lavalette, Highland Heights, Pine Beach, Lacey Township, Stafford Township, Eagleswood Township, Little Lake Harbor, are the boards that I represent. The reason I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of that was I have some factual testimony, but I also have some legal arguments I'd like to make. Factually, while I'm sure all of the neighbors are thrilled that the parking danger on West Laurel is being eliminated. I think the board should be aware that I personally took out the tape measure, and West Laurel at that spot is 10 feet wide. That's the size of a parking lot spot up at Walmart. It is, when you're going in one direction, it's two ways, it's not a one-way street. So you're going into it and somebody's on the other end, somebody's gotta back out to let the other vehicle through. So it was just that critical to make sure that West Laurel does not become an alleyway for other parking. I did wanna also mention that my deed to my property, again, my property is the corner, but it is Trenton Court. And my deed says that that Trenton Court is not a public street. It is an easement for a private roadway, that I have access to, thankfully. So my point is that the streets in that area are extremely narrow, extremely limited in what you can do, and parking is an absolute catastrophe in the area. I also wanted to mention that with regard to parking, since our last meeting, I paid more attention to what type of parking is happening in the municipal lot on the corner of Kramer and Arnold. And it is, there are cars in there virtually all the time. Sometimes it's full, sometimes it's, has just a couple of cars in there. But that parking lot, which is what the applicant would like to use for his parking, that parking lot is across the street from a church that has almost no parking. The salon across the street has almost no parking. There's a rehab facility across the street next to Dollar General, has almost no parking. The restaurants and businesses on Arnold Avenue have very, very limited parking. That lot should not be for the exclusive use of any of the other businesses in town, like any of the restaurants or the businesses should not have exclusive use of that lot, any more than the applicant should have exclusive use of that lot. And to plan on that lot, plan on an approval for 163 parking spaces of use, necessarily pointing only to this particular parking lot as to a place to accommodate.
Can I just clarify one thing?
Yeah.
Because I heard that differently. They talked about walking distance to some of the other lots
Right.
in town.
Oh, sure, sure.
So they weren't solely saying, and they weren't even saying that that lot was where they wanted to park people. It was one of the choices.
That certainly would be, but.
Right, okay, so I just want to make sure,
But
because
again-
you're making it sound like their testimony was, we're planning on using that lot exclusively to support our businesses. That's not how I heard it. I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
I understand. But my point is simply that the parking, allowing for parking for 163 or anywhere in that vicinity, allowing uses for that type of parking, without knowing who those tenants are, without knowing what's going in there, what kind of uses, the zoning code has a laundry list of things that are permitted in that zone. So the potential is rather wide-ranging. And without knowing what that is, it puts the board in a almost impossible position to determine, is that parking gonna be enough? Is the use appropriate for that? Because if the board is to grant a use variance today, then that issue is done, it's gone. And it's gone without us knowing what it is that's gonna go in there. I wanted to also mention that in the package that was with the board secretary were a couple of resolutions, which I got kind of, I didn't realize that was in there. I took a look at the resolutions. There's a resolution on March 6, 1997, application 1997-09, and there's one March 2nd, 1995, resolution, application 1994-11. Both of those resolutions were relative to Rudy's restaurant equipment. But both of those resolutions said that the second story of this, of permission to build, the second story is to be limited to storage. Now, there is no difference here today from 1997 and 1995. There's no difference that they're not playing, that the ordinances haven't changed, the area hasn't changed, and the applicant is not proposing any structural changes that would be involved. This is, and of course, your council will give you recommendation on this, but this is smack dab in the middle of a legal doctrine called res judicata. Twice before, this board said storage only on the second floor. And with nothing new, nothing anywhere, they're asking for a third time to put this, for something other than storage on the second
Isn't there
floor.
something new by removing any access to, say, the 10-foot 6 road? He could exercise his right to go on that with a car now, and him
Yes.
giving that up,
Yes.
and then putting it back into impervious has changed
My
from
point-
1997.
my point is
Wouldn't
that-
you say?
I would say that's a
If he
difference
flooded that
without a
road with
distinction without
cars,
At a time.
a distinction without a difference, meaning that has no bearing on the use of the property, what's going on West Laurel. That's a completely separate issue. What's going on in
pick your
commercial
poison.
end.
Would you rather have your road flooded with cars?
No.
Okay then.
So if you're saying that this is the, this is the concession that the board feels it needs to make in order to get rid of the parking issue on West Laurel, I understand that. However, under the municipal land use law, that's not the criteria for granting use variances. And I'm sure your council will
I understand that.
advise you. That's not the criteria. It's not, we're not here making, we're not horse traders here. We're not here to make deals. We're here to enforce the municipal land use law and the development regulations of Point Pleasant Beach. When this board grants variances, it's based on a use variance, it's based upon positive criteria. The positive criteria needs to be an inherently beneficial use, or somehow the property is particularly well suited for a use that's being proposed. No one suggests that it's particularly well suited for what makes it a non-conforming use, that being the residence. But my point is that this does not meet the burden of the positive criteria element of a variance. It also doesn't meet the negative criteria, because parking is still, I think every board member knows, parking is still going to be a problem. If use of that building is allowed, where 163 spots are required, it's still going to be a problem. When considering the use variance, the board, I counsel my boards almost every meeting when they're considering use
I have to,
variances.
look, it's fine, I don't mean to interrupt Mr. Brady. What he counsels his board is fine. He's making a statement to you. He's not counseling you, he's making his statement, and I would ask that he be limited to that. I don't really care what he counsels his board.
It's a legit objection, I understand. I don't think he's counseling us right now. We're gonna turn to Ben with some of these, affirmations or things that we wanna talk about, but
No.
he can make a statement.
No, and again, I'm certainly not taking it upon myself to counsel the board. Mr. Montenegro, who I know very well, I'm sure will do a fine job counseling the board. But my point that I've used is that when granting use variances, again, use variances are to be granted very sparingly under the law, and with caution, that when use variances are considered, courts need to be concerned about usurping the authority of the governing body. Remember, the governing body made some laws, and this board can grant adjustments when necessary, but certainly cannot decide that a particular requirement, like parking or whatever, and while that's not really something we want to do in Point Pleasant because there is no parking, well, I'm suggesting that maybe if that's the situation, maybe the ordinance should be changed, but unless and until the ordinance is changed, every board member swore under oath at the time that you were sworn in, that you would uphold the laws of the state of New Jersey, and including municipal land use law and the laws of this town. So my point would simply be that it is important that those laws be given full force and effect unless and until they work sincere hardship on the individual. I'm suggesting also to the board that the idea of granting a variance now for the second story, when we don't know what's gonna go in there, is premature. Remember, variances run with the land, they don't run with the individual. I mean, you hear this, I mean, that's what all boards hear, how wonderful the applicant is that's before you. But applicants sell property. They don't, it's not a lifetime commitment for applicants nor for the property. I mean, the property eventually will change hands. But the approval that this board gives, just like the approval that the board gave back in 95 and 97, runs with the land, not with the individual. So my point is that this board, I'm asking this board to hold off on allowing second floor use until we know what's going in there. But then you can judge what it is. It's not the board, one last item, it's not the board's obligation to figure out why it is that the applicant has not met the burden of proof under the land use law. It's the applicant's burden to prove to the board that he has met it. Again, just being in Mr. Montenegro's seat enough times, I know sometimes board members feel a bit of, well, how do I defend my action if I don't have a reason to say I don't like it? That's not the test. The board has to be convinced. Case law says that there has to be overwhelming proof that the applicant has met its burden. And I'm suggesting to the board that at this point in time, it's premature. It's been ruled on by this board twice. And it would not be appropriate at this point in time to grant variances without knowing what's going in there. And I appreciate your time for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben, since the.
Oh, I was just gonna jump in, just to
Yeah.
clarify, it's a D2 use variance, essentially an expansion, and while the non-permitted use, which is the single-family dwelling behind the funeral home, is not being expanded, because the second floor of the existing retail building is proposed for access and retail use as permitted, 4 uses permitted in the ordinance, that tends to have a negative and expansive effect on the non-conforming use, which is the single-family dwelling. So I just wanted to clarify that the board isn't being asked to approve a use that's not permitted. The uses that are not permitted are already there, or the use that is not permitted is already there, has been there for generations. What they're really looking for, and what Mr. Kashuba no doubt will say he testified to, was that in the allowance of the expansion of the use in the retail structure, does he meet the burden of proof, the negative and the positive criteria?
And I'll just dovetail on that, where it's a D2 variance, not a D1 variance, where they're coming to you asking to allow for a use that is not permitted in the zone. When you're dealing with the expansion of a non-conforming use, in this case, really an expansion of the permitted use that has a non-conforming use on the site, the courts say that the focus on that positive criteria for the board is, does the site accommodate the expanded use based on the proposal that's being presented? So that's really the focus on the positive criteria. On the issue of res judicata,
I was just gonna ask.
I'll allow Mr. Rubino to be heard on this, but effectively, Res judicata applies if the matter has been heard and decided in its entirety and to a conclusion. I would agree with what Mr. Neal had to say. There were substantial and significant changes to this application just by way of the change of the use of the driveway attached to West Laurel, the reduction in impervious coverage, the additional 2 parking spaces being provided for the single-family residential property. You know, a combination of those 3 things alone, I would submit that this is a different application. That shouldn't sway you one way or the other. At the end of the day, that just brings the case to the board. If res judicata were to apply, it would be off the board's table. Ultimately, you've heard the evidence, and you're gonna weigh the evidence, as you always do, as to whether the positive and negative criteria have been met.
Anything else, Mr.?
I don't know if there's anybody else.
No, I'm asking any follow-up to that from you.
Just on a matter of res judicata, to me, and I've also been board attorney for over 22 years, and I've been practicing law for a number of years, longer than I like to admit. And when I was a clerk working for a judge, I handled more than one res judicata case. Res judicata means, or the same facts that were before a judge or a board are the same facts being asked for again. I.e., so let's say I asked for a 15-foot front porch variance, and the porch was 8 feet and off the setback or whatever, and then somebody comes back and asks for the same thing. That's res judicata. You change that around again, that's no longer res judicata. In this particular case, I don't even see this as res judicata. I see this that we're asking for a change, and I think that's what we asked for, a change in the old resolution to allow the second floor to be used for something other than storage. I don't think that old resolution is determinative of or prevents somebody from coming back and asking for that to be used. If the Rudy's came back, they would be allowed to say, hey, look, things have changed, and we'd like to use the second floor. I don't think it'd be res judicata for that. So I don't think res judicata is in this case at all.
Very good. Anyone else gonna come up and make a comment? Yep, ma'am?
My name is Mary Turbeck, T-U-R-B-K.
You're gonna
And
get sworn in?
I live in 1127 Estelle Street, Point Pleasant Borough. I own the house in 504 Kramer in the beach. Yes,
Do you swear affirm the testimony you give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
do my best. I appreciate the time to talk. I don't have a lot to say, but I would like to say a couple of things. Yeah, I feel it is the duty of this board to uphold the zoning laws as they are, to help it and to be thinking with vision for the town. I think that that's really what's important. And I feel like there have been some mistakes made. And I just want to, even if it doesn't make any difference for this particular case, I just would like to bring it to your attention. Joe, is his name? Joe?
Mike.
Mike, I'm sorry, Mike. I have heard, and I haven't been to your place at Rudy's, but I have heard that what you've done has been really beautiful in the building. I have not seen it, but I've heard this, and I've heard that you have redone the house, and the house is also beautiful.
Thank you.
And so I've heard this from neighbors, but I don't know how much the town has known before Mike has done this work. Because what he has done in these buildings has really improved the buildings, right? So it makes it very hard to want to change it, because he's already done this fabulous work, right? Rudy's was built in sections, and the last section was from 1990, right? 1990 is no longer in the, antique, vintage kind of historical time, right? maybe it could have been, a lot of this could have been avoided, is if he had come to the town, and maybe he did, I don't know, you know, but come to the town and said, look, I know I don't have parking, I know I have non-conforming house, I know I have a non-conforming huge building, you can't do anything on the second floor, what can we do? But I feel like once you've restored a house, and once you've restored the building, which I've heard is great, right? And I have a tenant, it kind of binds you in a way that you feel like, oh, well, he's already done this, can I really like insist that he have 100 spots to park, you know? So I feel like these sorts of things should really come to the board long before that, anyone who's developing a piece of property, to kind of work out these issues and hear from the people in the town, which you got to hear from them last time. It was really clear how they felt, you know? And I honestly don't think that 2 more parking spaces really cuts it. And I really feel that there should be a much more creative way of figuring out to help with the parking. Because people are all happy, Mike, I think, that you want to bring in business into the building. That's not the issue. But if the building were smaller, you wouldn't need as many parking spots. So think creatively in a different way about the parking. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I'm gonna tell you something, it wasn't us.
Oh,
Sorry, I was just having, I can't just walk.
out in the hallway if you wanna go.
Yeah, we're still running the meeting.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Maybe if Ben can help or Ray can help, but I'm thinking about the 95 and 97 resolutions on this property allowing storage only. And since I've been on the board, and even before that, I mean, you guys been on the board prior to I was on the board, there was a fear in Point Pleasant Beach of people putting habitable space on the second floor of all these buildings. So why did they classify it as storage and not anything else, right? My spidey sense tells me, my intuition tells me they were trying to block habitable space to be built up there, right? And so the other gentleman got up and commented about tearing part of the building down. I mean, my thinking is, one of the positive, commercial development, commercial use in the downtown area is a positive part of this, right? If the owner or applicant tore the building down or let the building go in disrepair because he's not gonna be allowed to do what he wants to do with the variance, then what happens, right? So I've lived here since 1992, and I live on the corner of Atlantic and Gowdy. I have people park in front of my house on the weekends to go to the restaurants downtown, right? I'm fortunate, I have a garage, I got a couple parking spaces, but parking is an overrunning problem in this town, and there really isn't a solution unless you're gonna build parking garages around here, and it's a seasonal thing. Like the parking lot next to the applicant's building, the one that we just redid, the students park there during school season, right? They park in the big lot behind the Valentine house. They park back in there. So, we talk, and my wife and I spend a lot of time around town talking to people, and I really don't have businesses complaining that, everybody usually finds a place to park. There's the parking lot between Meridian and a dollar store. It's not always full. And the guy that owns that doesn't stop people from parking there if they're gonna go use the applicant's business. They don't do that.
Mr. Loder, real quick, I'm just gonna relay it back to what you wanted resolved with the 95, 97
Okay, so
resolutions from the professionals, because
Can we take that, can we looking at those 95, 97 resolutions into consideration in making our decision for this applicant, and the reasoning back then why it was granted for storage only?
I mean, Ben, I think the answer is that back then it was a Rudy's application, right?
Right, exactly.
So
Right.
Rudy's
Based
came
on
in and
what
asked
was
for
before the
storage.
board, just like what you're hearing last month and tonight is what you're gonna weigh.
But did he come in and ask for storage, or the town said the only thing we were gonna allow there was storage?
Don't know, and I don't wanna say not relevant. I mean, you could weigh all of that based on what you're reading in the resolution,
But we're being asked
Right.
to look at it differently, as Mr. Rubino said, that's the new case.
And if you were to feel that the reasoning in those resolutions is not necessarily applicable to the case at hand, then you would act accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
And just because it's, I'm not gonna deliberate at all, but I will just say, because it's relevant in the moment to the lady's comment, there's no decision-making that's going in based on any of the work that he's done in the buildings. I didn't know he did any work in the buildings till you just said it. I have no, there's no back and forth anymore. I'm just saying, I have no idea that that happens. And sure, if there could be some long-term planning that goes on with the town, that's not what we do. We're making decisions on different criteria. Anyone else have comment they wanna make? Looks like the public is done then, so, before we,
I just make,
Yeah,
just a
yeah, I'm
couple
gonna
brief
give you a
comments.
chance to,
I don't
close.
wanna belabor the matter. One, the improvements that have been made to the building have been cosmetic improvements, painting and so forth. Anything that needed permits or whatever, would have to get permits. And if your zoning officer felt that there were not correct or expansion, then they'd have to be before the board for that. So I'm advised that the building was really just cleaned up because it got in somewhat of a messy condition, and my client didn't wanna wait until this hearing was finished, until he cleaned it up. As far as parking goes, any of their towns, or many of the towns, or majority of the towns along the shore all have parking. Their downtown sections all have parking problems, as do the beach sections, especially during the season. Point Pleasant was wise enough at certain times to add a couple extra parking lots in town to allow for additional parking for people coming down to use the business section and or the school. But still, there's probably very few, I didn't count them up, but there's very few businesses in town that meet your parking requirements. So it's something boards have to take into consideration. It's 2026. It'd be easier if it was 1926, and you could foresee, the governing body could foresee what's gonna happen 100 years later and say, we need more parking to accommodate downtown. That's why you have boards of adjustment to allow, take into consideration what's happening today in 2026, and either decide that there is some type of recognized problem with downtown parking in general and offer relief off of that. I really don't have much else to say unless the board has questions.
Nope, everybody good? Wanna give us where we're at then, and then,
Sure,
we'll go into deliberations?
The stated conditions along the way were that there would be no outdoor gym exercise classes. Any music will meet the noise ordinance. Per Exhibit A4, the plan is revised and shall be revised to eliminate the concrete driveway to West Laurel and make that grass lawn area to be maintained by the owner. Condition that there is no vehicle parking allowed on that lawn. And then there's been an offered condition, this wasn't a condition that was set by the board, but a volunteered condition that they would seek a approval of the tenant, I'll call it the tenant 2 space, for any use up to the 165 parking count total for the site. That was the volunteered condition that they would seek.
Just clarifying that,
Mhm.
the space that the gym is going into, Ray, and that has a requirement for the parking already, right? And we know what that would be, so wouldn't it be 165 less that amount, and whatever that other business that comes in shouldn't be, like, they don't get, that new business can't get up to the full amount of 165, because we already have a business.
Correct.
Right.
If you look at,
That's the
if you look at
total.
A4, there's a chart on there, and it shows it pretty well, which, the tenant 1 gym space, is set at 52.4 spaces, and commercial tenant 2 at 1 per 100 square foot, which is your retail calculation, number would be 110.2, so let's call it 110.
So I needed to read the little chart, dummy. Is that what you were saying?
No, I didn't want you to think my math was that good or quick, that I was just pulling out numbers off the top of my head. It's there, it's set on there. So to your point, the tenant two space would be capped at 110.
I didn't hear it as a condition, but I thought it was one, that there was some restrictive timing for the gym use, like, because we keep claiming that it's a scheduled fitness gym, not a open-ended gym, so I thought there was some.
Mr. Chairman, we offered specific timing. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but the hours were set in the morning, and then I think again in the afternoon and so forth. And we would agree to those representations made by the gym owner as being conditions of the resolution.
Just Monday through Friday, 5:30 to 11.
Correct. And I think there was an afternoon.
And 5 to 7.
We don't have to guess. Mr.
Yeah.
Jennings is sitting here.
Right.
We can get it redefined so that we're accurate and Ben understands and
Yep.
can put it into the resolution. So
But again,
what's that, Rob?
I was just gonna say, now does that carry for the next gym, or does the,
Well, I think we
I
said.
think,
if
the
it's-
discussion was that if
If it
a
doesn't
new
stress
operator
the
came in
parking.
and was gonna abide by those same exact restrictions, they wouldn't need to return, but if they wanted to, operate a gym use, but at greater times than what's in here, they would need to return to the board.
Right, so if it's anything outside of the.
or
those
if it stresses the parking limit, right? Is there an and/or on that?
Well, the other thing with that.
Either of those would trigger us coming back to.
And the other thing
Yes.
is the representation as to use. This was not supposed to be an open gym where you and I can stop in off the street and just say, can we work out? There was structured classes and so forth.
What you're hearing recited as the hours and the intent of the use, are you agreeing that's what you said?
Yes.
Okay. So Ben, is that, do you need any clarification, or are you good on how that goes?
I'm good, I
in?
have it in my notes.
Okay. Anything else? No, Ray?
Can we-
Yeah.
Can we just go over I guess, for the other tenant, depending on the use, they're gonna have to come back as far as,
Certain uses would drive a higher parking requirement,
More than
which would
163?
drive them over 102, I think it is, or something here, right?
110?
So it's
Or
based on the
110.
submitted formula.
So
they would have to,
So if it was a use that created more of a parking burden than that number, they would have to come back.
Okay.
And they would have to give a plan of action and how they, but if it's allowed uses that don't drive above that parking, they'd be able to move in.
okay, thank you.
Said correctly, Ben?
Perfectly.
Get a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
just one little comment with that. Those restrictions sort of should calm the fears of the board that just anybody can go upstairs or in the place and turn it into like 300 people bopping around doing something. There's specific limits on what can be used there under a formula that allows X amount of tenants, I forget where, 160, whatever it is total. And if somebody wants to come in and exceed that, they're back before you. So certainly there are controls in place, even though we don't know what the tenant upstairs, who they're gonna be, there's certainly controls in place that if they don't meet the parking requirements set forth in the resolution and your approval, they'll have to be back before the board.
I totally got that. That's why I did what I did earlier, to make sure that we had that definition in there.
I just wanna repeat that so
Yes,
it's clear for
yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
And Mr. Rubino, to be clear, you're saying upstairs, the applicant is also proposing basement usage, use of
Correct,
basement.
so he means all of the spaces that we've testified to for,
Okay.
public access.
Correct.
Get a motion to close for deliberations, please.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Davis.
Okay.
A fun one to begin on.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was not to the applicant's particular liking that we had to come back for a second meeting. But I'm gonna say it gave me some opportunity to think really deeply about this application and where the impacts and where the benefits might be. So there's a couple things. There's been a couple comments about trying to get into the heads of what the previous board was thinking and what their reasoning was as to why that limitation was there. Was it something that was testimony by the applicant, or was it something they restricted because they were concerned about the use of the property? We don't know. And I think to Ben's point, it doesn't really matter now, because we're looking at the application as a completely different use. The previous use is gone. How that property got developed to the extent that it has is kind of mysterious, but it is what it is, and that's what it is today. And the reason we have the variance and use variance request, as Ben very eloquently stated, is because we have a residential structure as a primary use, along with a commercial use as a primary use, which is not allowed in the zone. All right, so all that said, I've heard loud and clear that 3 members of the public got up tonight, and one of their primary concerns was parking. And we keep hearing the number 163 parking spaces. There is not one single use I could think of that would go in there that would require 163 parking spaces right now. It just wouldn't happen. There are some that would definitely have a very large impact. I think because of the lack of parking in the area, that becomes sort of a self-limiting use of what may go in there. A restaurant may look at it and go, the facility isn't built out for it, and there's just no parking. That said, I can point to at least a dozen businesses in downtown Point Pleasant that have parking requirements that have 0 parking. 0 parking. So, not even a parking lot next door, all within a block's walk. Mr. Loader said that he gets people parking for downtown uses at his house. I live on the 600 block of Trenton Avenue. I get people parking on the opposite side of our street because we only have one side parking. I get people parking on our street to go for the downtown uses all the time. Parking is just a thing here in Point Pleasant Beach. It's always a challenge. It always will be. And I don't think that I reached this conclusion lightly. It's a lot of thought going into it, but I really do believe that the additional impact to parking will be negligible or straight up self-limiting as to what the use of the property will be. Also, in 1996, when the last resolution was passed, I've tried to think long and hard about what town was like. There was very, very little emphasis, if there was a master plan at that time, of developing or rehabbing the downtown section of Point Pleasant Beach. Everything was geared towards promoting the beach and the boardwalk businesses, restaurants and whatnot. I don't even remember more than one restaurant being downtown in 1986 when I moved to the area. A lot of businesses shuttered during the winter. So very, very different time that we're looking at here. We have a very, very vibrant downtown now with a lot of people, and a big chunk of that is because our master plan has said that's something that we are supposed to promote, and zoning is a good place for that to happen. So all of this gets back to, I find myself in agreement with Mr. Kashuba's testimony regarding the nature and extent of the expansion, certainly with respect to the gym, I think that, the property can, support that. I think that that is in fact, a good use of zoning. I think it promotes more traffic in the downtown, and not just parking, but I mean foot traffic. As to the negative criteria, I mean, straight up, they don't have the required number of parking. They've agreed to a limitation that says, if we can't get a use that, or if we get a use that wants to have a certain number of parkings, a requirement for parking, they're gonna get back before us. And I think that's a pretty good zoning place to be. So, I said a lot, and that's all.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden?
Yeah, you said going first on a case like this was hard. Going second is hard too. This is a difficult case. I struggled with it. I'm gonna start with the negative criteria. The increased intensity of use and the parking issues. Yeah, they exist, but they exist for every business in town, as Mr. Davis said. And I disagree with you. I think there's more than a dozen businesses that have absolutely no parking. I think there's well over a dozen.
Sure.
So as far as the positive criteria go, I mean, I think it's in fitting with the master plan. It's beneficial for business. And I remember from the last meeting, Mr. Cox was here talking about preserving the historic character. And there was a comment tonight, someone said that the Board of Adjustment is here to enforce the zoning laws, and actually, we're here to grant reasonable variances. We're not code enforcement, and we're not any kind of enforcement. We're here to grant reasonable variances. Right now, especially with the formula submitted by Mr. Kashuba, I lean in favor of this. I do want to hear what the rest of the board has to say.
Mr. Reynolds?
All right, well, I'll just start off with the parking. As stated by these people, parking's always been an issue, it always will be an issue. I just gotta say this because it's on my mind. I would venture to say that Paul and I are the only ones that remember diagonal parking on Arnold Avenue.
Everybody always says parking's an issue. I've lived in town for 59 years, so that means I've been driving for 42. I go to things downtown in the daytime, I go to things in the afternoon, in the morning, in the night. I go to Frankie's, I go to places on Bay Avenue, I've never, ever, 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 ever once not been able to find a parking spot in downtown Point Pleasant Beach. It's like the most bizarre thing with parking is, yeah, it's crowded. Maybe people don't like that they can't park exactly in front of the business that they're going to, but I've had to walk a block. I have never once pulled in the Borden's parking lot, I still call it the Borden's parking lot behind that, and not been able to find a spot in that lot. Not one time in my entire life. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what the parking problem is when you want to go downtown. That's a sidebar, but go ahead.
All right, so, in regards to master plan, in regards to the downtown area, one of the biggest things that the past and I guess present administration have emphasized is revitalization. This building's already been revitalized as far as cosmetics go. By allowing the second floor to open back up to business, I think that takes it a step further. It's encouraging, it's supporting small business in our town, in our area, bringing people to the downtown area. The gym itself is gonna support coffee shops, it's gonna support restaurants, it's gonna cause foot traffic on Arnold Avenue, which is something that we're always talking about and always looking for. I had a couple of things, but those were the main things. I do think that it's properly and well suited for the gym use and for the secondary use. Again, like everybody else, the fact that we put a limit on the parking for the second business does two things. One, it may discourage a bigger business from wanting to come in there, but I'll bet you it discourages Mike from wanting to come here again and reapply and pay all you people to.
You're right, Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, so, I mean, just like Paul, I've lived in the area maybe a day or two longer than 59 years, but I don't see any negative to this application.
Mr. Neal?
Yes, a couple of the comments that were said. One of them was, hey, why don't we essentially demo some of it or a portion of the building in order to create parking? That's just not cost efficient. That'll never happen. No one's going to buy a property to mow it down for parking. That's just, that's not feasible. We talked about how Rudy's didn't stress the public parking. Unfortunately, Rudy's went out of business, and that goes against what Mr. Reynolds was talking about with our master plan of downtown revitalization. And I think that by bringing in an established business that has local clientele, I think that could do something to spark or to be a catalyst for business in the area. Getting into the parking, yes, right, if we upheld the parking standard in Point Pleasant Beach, there would be three shops, and we wouldn't have much of a downtown, unfortunately. And I think that prioritizing West Laurel, because it is a paper road, right? That's not a lane that was built for two-way traffic or for heavy use. So by eliminating that and giving that back to, right, that protection or that insurance to the town, I appreciate that, and I think the neighbors appreciate that, as well as, finding a way to fit that, your need for the additional parking in there. I love this idea. Unfortunately, right, we have to, as this board, we have to take hardships into account, and I do like this plan. I am looking favorably on it.
Mr. Quake?
As far as the parking goes, I'll just echo everybody else's comments and just add that I've never had a problem finding a parking place downtown. Not that I drive that much, because I live within walking distance, but I would say that on any given weekend and maybe during the week, I have a harder time finding, and I live on Chicago, if I leave my house and it's after 10:30, 11, finding a parking place in front of my own house than I do, downtown sometimes. I think the space for the gym is a great space. I also like the conditions that are set as far as the music goes, the hours. I was down there before the last meeting, around 11 o'clock, and there was still plenty of spaces. I think I was there, I forget, it was either a Tuesday or a Wednesday during the week. Also appreciate the owner making the concession as far as the driveway goes. And also, as far as the other space, and if it's not within the use, them having to come, before the board as far as them going above the parking spaces. And I also agree with Mr. Reynolds' comments as far as it would be good for opening up the second floor for another use.
Mr. Loder?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Been good discussion tonight. So one of the other things I see I know what's going on downtown with the police. The police are enforcing the 3-hour parking time limit on Arnold Avenue, on Bay Avenue. So I see that as something that we could potentially help with the situation. Like everybody on the board, parking has always been a challenge. I like the fact that the applicant maintained the coverage under 70% of permeable coverage. And I think the applicant this applicant is going to continue to lend toward the redevelopment of the downtown with some new businesses and some new traffic down there. And hopefully, businesses will survive down there and not go out of business after 4 or 5 months. So I'm leaning to vote in favor of this application.
Yeah, another thing that I'm just gonna add on to the parking is, and especially for the people that live on Kramer and things like that, it's already lined. Like, no, the parking's not gonna change for you in any way. And understandably, I live on a cut-through street, right? I live on Curtis Avenue, so I know what a cut-through street is, and unfortunately, Kramer happens to be a cut-through street, because it is how you get to the southern side of town. I cut through it coming off of Curtis Avenue all the time. I go down Kramer and find my way over to Jersey Avenue, which is another cut-through street. But, you know, so I understand that there's gonna be movement on the street, but the parking isn't changing on, it's not gonna affect how people park near your homes or anything in any different way. All those lined parking are there. There are always cars that are in them already whenever I go by, so those cars will remain. Maybe they'll just be using this building now. I do find it interesting that I was sent by the wife today to go get a Diet Coke, and I went to Dollar General, and I was standing in that lot, and I was like, wow, this lot's really empty. And I looked across the street, I'm like, oh, there's the case tonight, and then I turned around and saw the big sign on the side of Dollar General that if you park here, we will laser you or something like that. And, you know, so I guess, but my point being, that may be a future place to reach out to that owner of that lot, if it's a private lot, and say, hey, could I lease a certain, because I don't know that, all the spots for foreshore pools or whatever comes with their building, but yet they seem to have all their trucks and things there, so they managed to find a way. So it just may be a future thing that might help you to say you have 15 spots for your building or whatever over there, and it's part of whatever new tenant. What is the West Laurel, he said it's not like a true street, it's a right of way. Did you ever, I thought, or Trenton Court, either of those? You thought those are right of way?
I mean, they're on the tax map as far as I know, so.
Trenton Court is
Okay, so there's no way to put any signage up on there that would restrict movement or say, you know?
I mean, certainly the governing body could certainly consider, you know, any kind of traffic measure that they so desire.
Just another thought, and that may be a discussion. So, again, I think, we're talking about putting retail businesses in a retail space in a downtown filled with other businesses. So, it makes sense to me. Again, I understand the parking requirement is, not met, but I think it would be particularly unfair to one building owner versus all the others that have that. Again, I think I made myself clear on how I believe the ability to find a spot in the town is, because although I live close, I don't walk. Maybe more obvious, look at you. You're in good shape. So, you know, I think it's just something that works itself out. Some of that spillage, I mean, Mr. Yule said he's in favor of the case, and he lives on Grove Street, so he's a person who probably more so than Mr. Loader or Mr. Davis gets downtown spillage on his street, but still he's saying a downtown use is okay to him because it's supporting the master plan's revitalization and helping fill businesses and buildings. We have enough buildings that don't have tenants, and every time I drive up and down Route 35 right now, heading south, and I get to the old car wash, and then I continue looking to my left on, you know, property after property there. I'm like, I look for more revitalization and the extension of the downtown that way a couple of blocks, and we got to start to fill some of these buildings. And I think that's what an application like this does, right? It's bringing someone who has sunk some dollars into it, made it nicer. I'll touch on, and I know Mr. Reynolds just wanted to make sure that it was touched on again. They did remove that driveway in the back. They turned it into a grass area. That will eliminate people from utilizing that and keeping people off that street. So that was a concession made. We do have some limitations on future tenants through parking. So I think it's a sound application. I know people did say, to Ms. McFadden's point, that, you know, it's the job of the zoning board to uphold the zoning laws. Well, variances exist for zoning boards to evaluate and have sound reasoning for why we believe. If we just said no to everything, there wouldn't be a zoning board. So I think we have to make that evaluation. You could hear that there's been a lot of comments stated by the board, because I think the overwhelming thought here is how it's helping our downtown, and it's bringing in people into the downtown that will go to other businesses as well as this business. They'll shop, it'll become something else, we'll get another tenant in there, and, you know, that is the definition of revitalization and cross uses and all those kind of good things that make this a sound case, in my opinion. Get a motion to close for deliberations.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
With the stated conditions that Ben has outlined previously, can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Neal, second by Ms. McFadden, to approve application 2026-14 of 804-808 Arnold Ave LLC with conditions. Secretary Davis.
Yes.
Ms. McFadden.
Yes.
Vice Chair Reynolds.
Yes.
Mr. Neal.
Yes.
Mr. Blake.
Yes.
Mr. Loder.
Yes.
Chairman Prentice.
Yes.
Application approved with conditions. Thank you. You're very welcome.
Adjournment.
Thank you very much,
Motion.
everybody.
Second.
moved.
All in favor?
Aye.